Ah, all right. So today I get started talking about bathroom remodeling costs. I've got a little slide deck kind of rolling through things. If you have any questions, just shoot them out. I'm happy to answer them in the chat and kind of go over them and see if I can help. Um, the slide deck is obviously just something to kind of keep us moving forward and aligned, and hopefully it's something that everyone can get value from. I kind of want to just run through who we are. I also want to talk about contractors in general. I think it's important, especially when we talk about pricing specifically, to understand kind of, I call them, there's three types that I sort of bucket them into, and understanding how their profiles sort of come together and what's important from each one. Then we're going to talk about projects, how we're going to talk about bathrooms specifically. That's what we do. That's what we specialize in. So we're going to talk about, projects, project types, certain elements, parts and pieces. And then I'm going to go, kind of deeper into pricing. This is going to be relative to how we price projects. We're located in Denver, Colorado. So, if you're out in the Midwest, if you're down south, if you're out east, like, it may be different for you. Like, it could vary. But I think some of the tips and tricks and general themes of the conversation are going to apply nearly anywhere. And then at the end, I kind of bundle it all up into what matters and why it's important for you as a homeowner, and really just what to pay attention to when you're looking for, your next contractor or a contractor for your remodeling project. And again, if you have any questions, stop me along the way. A little bit about me, why should you listen to me? I'm just a guy hanging out in my garage, coming at you live on YouTube today. As you can see here in the bottom corner, I've been, sorry, my slideshow doesn't, or my deck doesn't quite fit the way I put it together. I might have to figure that out next time. But in general, this is me on a project site building some houses. I think it's my grandpa's house, actually. So ever since I was little, I like to build stuff. Been doing it a long time. And then here, my dad and my uncle kind of teaching me how to build houses when I was growing up. I probably, I don't know, maybe a sophomore in high school here. We're framing a house, back home up in Montana. And then this was kind of hard to tell, but this is me pouring concrete on one of the first houses I built solo. I think I was 23, 24. So again, been doing it for a long time. As I, kind of got through those stages, I went to college, got I got an engineering degree, tried out some civil engineering, found that was okay. It really wasn't what I wanted. I liked the building, the building part of things, maybe less so than the designing or the the calculations part of things. And then I kind of worked for some large commercial firms. I sold roofs in the Midwest, and then kind of a recent stint, I did some consulting, and that took me kind of all across the U.S. and out into the South Pacific on some fun projects like that. I also happen to be an advocate for job site safety. Here you can see a nail that is in my kneecap, or in my in my knee, and yeah, so learned a lot along the way. But anyways, enough about me. That's just some background and some info on why I might be able to help you with your project, and why it might be important or useful to listen to a resource like myself. I know on the internet there's a lot of information. Sometimes it's hard to sift through what's right, what's wrong, and what makes sense. So just a little, kind of proof behind what I bring to the table today, and hopefully something that might help you. Northbuilt. Who is Northbuilt? Northbuilt is a bathroom remodeling company. We started out kind of as a general contractor, doing a little bit of everything, building houses, doing additions, exteriors, interiors, did some light commercial stuff, some tenant finish. And ultimately what we've landed on, what we're geared towards, is now custom and semi-custom bathroom remodeling projects. So these are just a handful of our projects. Chloe tile there on the left, that's a really popular option from Bedrosian. So just something that we did, I think it was last year. In the middle, kind of a nice primary bathroom. That's going to be a case study that I show later on in the slide deck, where we'll dig deeper into sort of the pricing and the aspects of that project, and kind of how it all comes together. And then we've got what we call kind of our signature series, which is a pull and replace for standard bathrooms, 5x8, the 40 square foot, I would say, really typical bathroom layout that you see all across America. I can't speak for all across the world, but definitely very, very common layout and configuration. And our signature series kind of applies to that as sort of an affordable, clean, simple, and effective update and upgrade package for those layouts. So that's who we are. We're located, like I say, located in Denver, Colorado, just outside of Denver. We're based in Westminster, so halfway between Denver and Boulder, and we serve both of those municipalities for bathroom remodels. Excuse me. Can I do that? No, I gotta click on this. My goal today, and this is kind of my goal across the board. This is a slide that I use pretty frequently for other presentations and things like that. But education, right? How's this supposed to go? My goal is to take some of the knowledge that I've learned over the years, transfer that to you, so you can understand how it works, what to pay attention to, understanding options, kind of that second point there. What can you do? What can't you do? What should you do? Maybe. And then the last thing is just making decisions, right? Ultimately, I tell our prospects and our clients this on our site walks is it's like, my goal isn't to sell you a bathroom. My goal is to help you understand how this works and to make a decision that's right for you, your family, and your project. So those are always kind of my goals. And I like to start with that just to make sure that we're all on the same page with what I'm trying to do here. Let's chat about these contractors. So this was that first section that we're going to get into from the agenda. I group contractors into three types. And this, again, is, I would say, I think it works for a lot of scenarios. There's a handful that don't quite fit in there. But for the most part, you can typically bucket a remodeling contractor, whether that's an individual, a team, into one of these three buckets. So I start with Bob the Builder, right? Tends to be, and the nature of our industry is a little bit older. So Bob is usually a little old school. He's usually set in his ways, pretty hard-nosed, driven, my way, the highway type of deal. Doesn't always have clear process. Sometimes they will. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes they will, and there are plenty of old school guys who do a great job. So don't get me wrong. There are the outliers, but what I find is they're a little bit challenging to work with. They don't always answer their phone. They're hands on, and so it tends to be just difficult. I got to fly in here. Difficult to work with. So I tend to recommend avoiding Bob the Builder. I just think there are too many pitfalls that come with that, and they are. I just think you should avoid that. I think that model is a little bit antiquated in how those guys run those projects and those types. And I think the world has evolved, and the way we do things needs to evolve too. And some of them have, like I say, but for the most part, that's the first one, Bob the Builder. I say kind of avoid that mentality, if you will. Second is dynamic duo. I call them Jack and John. They are maybe young and upcoming. They sometimes how people fall into the trades, I like to say that they fall into it where they like replace a floor for a neighbor, and then their mother-in-law wants a bathroom, so they do a bathroom project, and then that gets recommended to somebody in the city next to them, and it's like, oh, can you come in and do my basement? And they just kind of start to acquire these skills over time, and they get pretty good at it. Most of the time they're pretty nice. They're pretty good to work with. They're trustworthy. I would say something that tends to be not a red flag, but a yellow flag with that particular category is going to be their experience, right? They might not be licensed. Sometimes they have somebody who can pull a license for them or pull a permit for them who has a license. Again, you can consider them. There are plenty of scenarios where those guys work out. I kind of used to be in that bucket. When Brett and I used to do some things together. So I don't knock those guys whatsoever. I think there's a place in this world for them. And a lot of times they only want to get better. Sometimes they end up getting themselves in trouble from a business perspective, or from a project perspective, they get in over their head. But most of the time, they're, again, the right people. They come into play, and they have a spot that can be well worth it. I think there are unicorn scenarios with these guys. I would consider myself to be one of those. When it was me and Brett, we wanted to be better, we wanted to get better, and we were really trying to turn into a professional team. And when you find those guys in that place, you usually get a lot of value. Your dollar goes a long ways. So I would say definitely consider kind of that dynamic duo. I call them Jack and John. And then lastly, we have the professional remodeling team, right? We definitely fall into that category. A lot of my colleagues fall into that category. Very experienced, have a lot of resources, usually have a team behind them. They have system and processes for quality assurance, quality control. Their planning process is usually, well-defined and established. You get what you pay for. And I would say, what I always like to explain to people is, as you go down this list, typically your cost will increase and your risk will decrease. So as you pay a little bit more for that professional remodeling team, you have to worry less about something going catastrophically wrong that they cannot fix or handle or maintain. There are outliers to every situation. I'm not saying this is a catch-all, but in general, as you move down that list, your risk will also decrease, which I think is a valuable thing to understand, especially when it comes to pricing, which again, the whole conversation today is about pricing. So that's who we are. I recommend us, obviously. So I would say that's just a good way to understand what I consider the three types of contractors in the remodeling space. And specifically when we look at bathroom remodeling, those are kind of the three that I bucket them into and how I explain them. Pitfalls. Again, this is all going to tie together, but I think it's important to kind of set this foundation. Pitfalls for most contractors. There's a lot of them. I think these are some of the more common ones that I see. So overselling the team. In other words, it's like coming into busy season, they sort of have that mentality that it's not, it's busy. We got to get as much work as possible. And then pretty soon there's 1, 2, maybe 3 projects that really start to fall behind. They usually lack in some quality. They lack in some oversight. There tends to be some things that get missed or get skipped and have to get reworked, stuff like that. Another thing that happens, I didn't phrase this very well, but saying yes to keep revenue coming in the door, that just means that they're going to take projects that maybe don't fit them. For example, let's say we're a bathroom remodeling team and we need to keep some money flowing in the door. And we're like, oh yeah, Mrs. Smith, we'll do your roof. No problem. It's like, well, could we do that? Yes. I mean, I have no problem doing that, but does it really fit the team? Does it make sense? Are we maybe going to not deliver the best product that we could or the best service that we should? Most likely. So that's another common pitfall. Lack of systems. This happens so much in our industry because we're very fragmented, and it tends to be made up of a lot of smaller individual contractors or smaller groups, smaller teams, things like that. And so when those systems aren't in place, it's hard to get a hold of them. So let's just say, again, you have a Bob the Builder who's hands-on, he's doing another project, and the plumber is at your house trying to install something but has a question and nobody can get a hold of him. It's like, well, now you're sort of stuck. So that's kind of something that tends to happen. These last two sort of tie together, but a lot of builders are really great at their craft. They do a phenomenal job at what they actually install and using their hands and their knowledge behind it and all of that. But it tends to not always translate to running a well-managed or a well established business. And so you have some issues tending to be with cash flow. That's typically what I see more often than not, is mismanagement of cash flow. The old saying, robbing Peter to pay Paul, things like that, where it's just sort of a sometimes a cyclical situation that they tend to be able to climb out of occasionally, but not all the time. So that's what we see, or that's what I see fairly often. And then typical scenarios, again, these kind of fall in place from those or come second from those pitfalls. Cut and run. We've all heard this. I hear it more often than not. And I've even been a part of projects where we've came in after this has happened. And so they get in too deep. Maybe it's a project that doesn't align with their team. Maybe they don't have the cash. Maybe they underbid it and they just wanted to collect a deposit to keep some cash flow going, but then realize that they're not going to they're almost going double negative because they're below. So anyways, they're just gonna leave, not come back, not call you, maybe change their name, whatever. It's one of those deals where they're just gonna do that. Schedule volatility. This happens and it ties back into overbooking, right? There is maybe too much on their plate. They don't have a good system. They aren't sure how to structure projects properly. And so that schedule really fluctuates from job to job. And if they have multiple jobs going at the same time, it's hard for them to coordinate things effectively. So you have a lot of erratic scheduling. He said, she said, again, communication breakdowns, no process, no system. Like, oh, I said I was going to install this. Oh, well, we thought you meant this. And we ordered the Kohler, but now we're getting a Delta. Like, who knows? But things like that where it's not documented well and they're just rolling with it. They need more money. This happens all the time. And typically if they don't get the more money part, it ends up being the cut and run situation. They are, again, bad at managing their cash. This is not an unknown feature of contractors. It is very commonplace. And one of those reasons why I recommend, listening to individuals like myself and good resources out there so that you don't get into these situations. Lastly, you become the project manager. Some people are totally fine with this. I've had this conversation many times where clients and homeowners will say, well, I'm happy to bring in my own plumber and bring in my own electrician, and I'm going to purchase materials. I just need you guys to, do the trim and install the vanity and help me with tile or something like that. And it's like, well, okay, that's great if that's what you want to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. And absolutely, for us, that's not a great fit. So we politely decline those requests. But if you don't want to be a project manager, you have to really be careful because you can quickly become one if you don't get the right team in place. So those are just a few things. Now let's talk about projects, types, options, materials. And we'll just kind of get into it here. I kind of think of these, again, you're going to see themes like 3s and 5s. I tend to group things like that. It just sort of makes sense for me, but hopefully it'll make sense for you. The first one, pull and replace, right? Our signature series, I've got similar photos again, but our signature series here up in the corner, pull and replace, right? The layout, a lot of these bathrooms, we can't modify the layout too much without really getting into different elements, like reconfiguring the room next door or taking additional space and combining it into the bathroom and things like that. So a lot of bathrooms tend to be within their own configuration or their own 4 walls, and most of them are pull and replace, and it's going to leave the vanity where it's at, the toilet where it's at, and the wet area, the tub shower combo, the shower area, wherever it's located. So most time those won't require a permit. Pretty popular, fairly commonplace, not bad at all. There's nothing wrong with it. That's just the first type. Second, I call modifications. A good example, and you kind of see this photo here, is these 2 projects are the exact same, or it's a little bit of a different angle, but in general, this was a big drop-in deck tub, and then we replaced it with a soaking tub. So did it move locations? No. Was it a pull and replace? No. Did we reconfigure anything? Not really. So I call this a modification, where we just took it from a deck tub to a freestanding tub, stayed in the same place. We did put the, you can kind of see the filler was on the front, and then we put it on the back. So small modifications there just to make this feel a lot better after that remodel was completed. Reconfiguration, in the bottom here, you can kind of see we took out this wall and we built, there's a sliding pocket door here. So this particular bathroom sort of had a divided layout, so to speak, where they had the wet area and the toilet in a separate room, and then they had the vanity on the outside of that. And we were able to combine them into one and kind of make it feel a little bit more streamlined, just the layout fit better. So there's a lot of, I would say, primary bathrooms that tend to have that, or tend to have more ability to reconfigure them. And most often that's going to be happening in primary bathrooms where you have the square footage, you maybe have those walls in place, you maybe have something that you want to adjust more than just a modification. So those are the 3 types that we have projects, and we kind of categorize them as pull and replace, modification, and reconfiguration. I keep hitting that. Here. All right, let's get into some pricing. So I like to use percentages. I find percentages tend to apply a little more across the board. So when we look at some of the options that we commonly talk about for our projects, we've got heated floor, curbless shower entries. I say plumbing fixtures. It can be body jets, hand wands. Maybe it's two shower heads. Maybe it's a rain head and a wall head. Just additional plumbing fixtures, usually in the shower area, typically in the shower area. Steam units are becoming very popular. Denver is a very active city, very healthy city, very, I would say health forward or health conscious sort of culture. So a lot of steam unit action and activity. Backlit mirrors, they're common. I wouldn't say we get a lot of requests for them, but they are a thing that we talk about in the options sort of discussion. And then bidet toilets, those are becoming extremely popular as well. And so I've put percentages on all of these. Just oops, let me scroll up just so you can see that one. There we go. Percentages, and these are percentages of the overall project. So if your bathroom, let's use easy math. If your bathroom costs $10,000, to go to a curbless shower entry or a curbless shower, add 6%. So what is that? 6%, 600. So add $600 to 10 grand, and that's roughly the adjustment to the overall project price that you'll need to put in that curbless entry. Now, I will preface, and why I use percentages is because every project is slightly different. If you'll notice, it's kind of hard to tell from this photo, but this shower was I think it's 8 foot long by 4 foot wide. That particular curbless entry might have been more than 6% just because it was so large and we had a pretty large transition, and then you end up having to waterproof all the way out in the floor, all of that stuff. So there are nuances to every one of these, but in general, that gives you a loose idea of kind of how these percentages work and where the costs associated fluctuate. Backlit mirror, 4%. Now, you might think that's kind of high. It's oh, you just buy the mirror. It's well, the key reason there is the electrical, right? You have to have electrical pulled over for it to tie into, as well as the cost of the mirror. And again, you can buy extremely expensive backlit mirrors. You can buy extremely expensive anything. So this is just relatively speaking. And these are also costs associated with what we consider our guest bathroom or our standard bathroom. Basically, that one that I talked about, a 5x8, 40 square foot, traditional hallway bathroom layout, full bathroom layout that you see in 90% of American homes. Steam units. Steam units are going to push your cost up pretty dramatically. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that happens with steam units as far as both power or electrical and plumbing. And so that's going to be roughly a 22% increase. Each unit is slightly different. So again, if you have, but it should be fairly relative. So I would say anywhere from 18 to 25% is a good rule of thumb for adding a steam unit. You're gonna have additional waterproofing in the shower. You're gonna have additional glass to get the full enclosure. You're gonna have, like I say, the electrical and the plumbing, and then you're gonna have the unit itself. So it is planned for a pretty hefty percentage of that budget allocated towards the steam unit itself. It just requires a lot more energy and effort altogether to put it in and make it work. Bidets, 10%. This is based on that. The one I have photoed there is a Kohler unit. I think Duravit, they have, I would say, some of the more inexpensive options, and there's a couple other off-brand ones. This is for a Kohler bidet. Toto is going to move up probably maybe the 12 to 15%. The cost of the actual toilet itself is really what the driving factor is there, especially relative to, I would say, kind of that average standard project price or a full bathroom project price. Heated floor, add 7%. Basically, the one driving cost factor that could move this to maybe closer to 9 to 10% is going to be where the power comes from. And a lot of times we're going to have dedicated circuit running that particular heat unit, and making sure that has a dedicated circuit can be challenging depending on where the bathroom is, depending on what, where the main panel is. All those factors kind of roll into that. And then lastly, for additional heads, and body jets and sprays and things like that, at about 5%. Now, if you've got everything you can think of, which is like, okay, you've got multiple shower heads and multiple body jets and multiple wands, and like you're just got like all sorts of additional stuff. Um, it might be more than that, but in general, if you see, we've got, you can't see the one in the bottom there, but there's like 4 body jets, a hand wand, and just a regular overhead or on the wall shower head. You can add 5% to go from just a regular shower head to body jets and a wand. Again, brand might fluctuate that a little bit, but overall, that's kind of what you're going to see, those options move project pricing as a whole. As we talk more about pricing, we categorize sort of our, I guess you could maybe call them our packages or our selection levels into 3 categories. We call them essential, premier, and luxe. They're exactly as they sound, right? Like good, better, best. That's really how we put them together. In every project, we have dedicated project manager, a plan set, material list, construction schedule, and then a final cleaning. And that just comes as a baseline, right? And then when we get into, essential, we've got kind of lower end, and I don't mean like they're bad. They're just more affordable. That's really what it comes down to. They're easier to install. They're a little bit more affordable. Sometimes they tend to be lower maintenance as well, just depending on what it is. But so you can kind of see those listed out. I would say that the main thing that drives cost as you go up is going to be, brand quality and manufacturing quality for fixtures and finishes. It's going to be transitioning. If we think of what we have in this essential package, we've got LVP as our flooring, and we also have we use Centrel panels. So we have panel systems in our showers. And then as you go to the luxe, we're going to move a lot more into tile, into custom elements. And then we're going to do tile flooring. We have wood cabinet instead of like a prefab set, so we're going to get a lot more custom as we move through those lines. But this is something that just kind of helps establish how that price fluctuates and what we can expect as we move up. And again, none of these are set in stone. We've had plenty of clients pick Kohler fixtures and then want LVP flooring. Like there's nothing wrong with that. And then that's where, there's no one size fits all, and there's no like magic wand that says, boom, this is what the project price is all the time. So when we get into custom and semi-custom remodeling, it is an estimated price turned into a construction proposal. But these, elements of how we categorize things and how we help break them down, I think really do benefit our clients and hopefully can benefit you if you want to understand kind of how pricing goes together from a professional team. So feel free to just screenshot that or whatever and take a look. So now, based on what we just looked at the last slide, right? So we've got our 3 tiers, right? We've got essential, premier, and luxe, and these are kind of what we've got included in each of those sections. And then if we go to the next one, same thing. We've got essential, premier, and luxe, and then we've got our project type. So this gives us a moving range based on selection level and project type of where you can budget your project. This has been instrumental both internally and externally for giving clients a good idea of where our project pricing sits. And again, this is relative to us. I'm not talking about anything else. I know there are companies that do wet area projects like, Rebath, Dream Style, Premier Home Pros. I think some of their wet area projects are above 17,000, and you're not going to get some of the things that we're thinking about in that. So it's like there are different models, there are different methods, there are different sales pricing, there are different price points, but this just gives you a rough idea of where we sit and what you can expect to budget for your project type based on what you're wanting from a finish level. So again, nothing too crazy there. It's our general table. It's a pricing table. It's what we use, again, to just start the conversations and make sure we're aligned with clients and expectations and really start to break down what could be expected for what costs and what price point and things like that. So hopefully that helps kind of, just determine where your project might sit and maybe just understand what we've got going on here in our market and how that could apply. Again, this isn't across the board. General rule of thumb. you can see how every part of a bathroom remodel project kind of fits into the overall total from a percentage perspective. Again, I like to use percentages because your project may be, every project is unique, and so no one project is going to be the exact same as another. And so typically no price is the exact same as the other. Sometimes they are, if they're repeatable, shower only systems or something like that, like, yeah, they could be very, very similar, and that makes total sense. But when we get into, like I say, the custom and semi-custom, this is going to be a table that I think is helpful and reflective of those costs. We always include design. So if we don't, then that can get pulled out. But for the most part, there's always some element of design, whether that's even just picking out materials for a pull and replace, and kind of getting that together. There's always something, but in general, design kind of assumes a plan set and a material list. That's kind of what's in that design bucket. General requirements. This is management and oversight. This is a dumpster. This is cleaning. This is housekeeping. This is any delivery fees. That's what general requirements are going to be. Existing conditions, demo. That's pretty much the only thing that goes in there. Mechanical is going to be in your bathroom. It's going to be your bathroom fan. Maybe moving a duct or putting in a new register on the floor, wherever that supply vent might come out. Electrical, just as it sounds. Plumbing, same thing. And this is for, again, material and labor. This is all included. Cabinetry and countertops, so your vanity set. Finishes, these are, I kind of lump together. That's just how we estimate them. So it might be better if I pull them out. But in general, you can expect your finishes to be about 30 to 35%. They're a substantial part of a project. They really are. Specialties, that's going to be like mirror, accessories, toilet paper holder, robe hook, things like that. Door and window, we just categorize that as your shower door, right? So if this assumes that your project has a shower door or it has some sort of a glass door, and that's going to be the cost of the shower door. Wood and composites, that's just going to be your trim, right? That's going to be when we're talking about bathrooms, and this is specifically for a bathroom. I believe this was for, I did this a while ago, so I apologize, but I believe this was for like a full bathroom. Again, a 5x8, 40 square foot standard layout, guest bathroom, hall bathroom, whatever we want to call it. Very standard, the one that we have been talking about the whole time. So you're going to have some base trim and you're going to have a little bit of casing around the door, not that much. Yeah, so those are kind of the category breakdowns of where you can see your costs kind of accumulate, where you can see your dollars go, and roughly where it kind of gets spread out across a project. Finish is going to be your number one, plumbing number two, electrical is number three. Sometimes electrical and cabinetry will see flip flop, at that 10% range. One might be a little more than the other if you go with something a little more custom. And from the electrical perspective, maybe a lot of times we put in like maybe 2 can lights and then a new overhead or a new wall mount, over the vanity. That's a pretty common application for us. But let's just say you're like, no, we don't have to do any of that. Let's just keep it all the exact same. Usually there's just going to be one light over the vanity. Maybe there's a bathroom fan, which is going to be included in the mechanical section. But it's like we're just swapping a light fixture. In that case, that electrical portion is not going to be as high of a percentage. But just a quick example. And there you can see, kind of like I say, lumped in the middle. Those are going to be your highest for electrical, plumbing, cabinetry, and countertops, and then your other finishes like drywall, paint, flooring, and tile. Okay, so when it comes to pricing, everybody, you hear a couple different things, or I hear a couple different things, but it's like what it really comes down to, especially as a homeowner, if you're watching this, is it's like, are you getting what you pay for, right? Like, and how do you determine that? I think you have to watch videos like this. You have to talk to a few different contractors. You have to understand, what the level of service that you're wanting, what the quality of installation you're wanting, what you're willing to kind of put up with. Are you going to have to be your own project manager? Are you going to be completely hands off? Are you going to be skiing in the Alps and they're going to just take care of everything while you're gone? Like, what's the level of service involved there, and what are you wanting from it? And then will it improve? I always like to say, will it improve your lifestyle, right? Like if you walk into your bathroom, which most of us do at least 2 times a day, if not more, and you don't like it, it's like, all right, well, if it improves your lifestyle and you walk in again multiple times a day, you spend a fair amount of time in there regardless. There's something to be said for that as far as a value perspective from an end result. Return on investment. This isn't, I don't have any hard data to back this up, but in general, from the information that I know and the things that I've read and the market that we play in here in Denver, Colorado, typically your ROI on a bathroom project right away is going to be 75%. So again, let's just use 10 grand. If you remodeled part of your bathroom for 10 grand, got a new shower, whatever, you're going to get $7,500 back right away. So if the value of your house is $1 million, you could sell it for 1,007,500, right? That's the theory, or that's how the application works. And then we usually see our full project recoup the costs in, um, excuse me, we typically see our projects recoup the full cost in about 2 years. So you'll get that extra 25% if you stay in that house for about 2 years, both in usability, right? You get to use a new bathroom, which is awesome. And then you'll also get that sort of adjusted, I guess you could say, appreciation from that being a remodeled space instead of a dated space. So, and then, kind of just last topic on this, funding. Just the different types of things that we see. We see, just the standard payment types: cash, check, transfer, credit card, things like that. We're also seeing a fair amount of HELOCs coming into play. Most people are, after the rate adjustment, or the low rates several years ago, people haven't really moved. The equity has kind of accumulated in their homes. They probably still have that lower rate, and they're able to kind of pull out some capital and basically just use their own home to finance the home remodel project, which is, I'd say we see a combination of all three of these in some form or fashion. There's no one that like takes the cake. And then construction financing, right? Just kind of your traditional sort of construction loan, or term loan from a lending institution. So those are just some of the things that we see with clients and how they like to pay for stuff. Uh, this is that primary bathroom that I talked about. I just want to put together a quick little case study just to give some more insight on into pricing. Our size of this was 173 square feet. It was a good sized bathroom, really large shower, double vanity. It has a soaking tub. It had a separate, you can't see it in these photos, but it had a separate toilet room. The toilet room is kind of back over here. It's behind that towel there. So anyways, the key aspect I think here is, like, this is a large bathroom. It had marble. All of that tile is marble. All of the tile in the shower is marble. It had dual shower heads in the shower. It had heated floor. Um, it also has traditional stained trim. So we had to find some stained trim. It had custom vanities. We went from a deck tub to that freestanding tub. So this was a nice remodel. We didn't really relocate too many things. I guess electrical wise, we did take from overhead lighting into sconces. So pretty minimal changes there. So as far as like layout is considered, we didn't reconfigure anything. I would say we just slightly modified a few details, but nothing crazy. For the most part, everything stayed in the same location and just adjusted slightly. So um, people, I don't hear it as much anymore, but it used to be a really common thing of like, oh, well, what's the price per square foot? It's like when you get into smaller projects, that just it's not really even a thing. But I broke it down in here. So again, size was 173. Overall price was 107.66. So our price per square foot was around 619 to 620, which I actually think is pretty reasonable. Mainly because this bathroom was so large, right? Like there's been many times where we've actually done smaller bathrooms and that price has been closer to like 1,000. So it's all just relative, but as part of a case study and a good example, I just thought this one would work well. The tile cost was 37% of the overall price. Feel free to do the math on that if you really want to, but the material itself was rather expensive. It was marble. And then we had to, install heated floor. The shower itself was large. There was a lot of tile work. If there's one thing that you can do if you're trying to reduce your budget or make your project a little bit more affordable, eliminating or reducing tile is a great way to start to do that. Duration on this one took about 7 weeks. we had a few snags. We usually shoot for 6 weeks. 4 to 6 is really what we shoot for, but this one ended up going a little bit over. So, yeah, there's just a quick case study on that one, kind of giving some examples of real world stuff, and kind of what we do here. So, kind of to tie things up, I've got our last couple slides here just to talk about really what matters, what's important, why it's important, and maybe some things that you can do on your end if you're starting to kind of look into a remodel project, look into a bathroom remodel project, and just educate yourself and take some tips away from today. So, I get this all the time where, and I don't ask it this way, but understanding your budget for what you want to spend or what you can spend on a project is extremely important. It's incredibly important. Even if you don't know what it costs, like let's say, because that's what I get a lot is people are like, Alex, I don't know what it's going to cost. I have no idea. You just tell me. I'm like, well, that's great, but like where? And usually I'll tell them a number. It's like, it's going to be 80, and they're like, oh, it's a little more than we want, which is always the case, and that's fine. I get it. It's no small feat. But like understanding where what you can invest is I think the most important thing from a homeowner perspective that you can do. If you know that your overall top end all in budget is $60,000, I think you're way better off just coming out with that right away in the beginning when you're talking initial conversations with contractors and saying, hey, I've got a primary bathroom. I want to do these 3 things. I would really like to incorporate a steam shower if we can, and a couple other elements that I think would really enhance our space and make our lives better. Do you think that's possible for $60,000? There are going to be some remodelers. There's going to be some teams that's not possible. There are plenty of firms around that I talk to and that I know of who that just doesn't fit their model. They just don't do that. They are bigger builders. The smaller projects don't make sense. And it just won't work. There are what I would consider, the John and Jacks, the dynamic duos of the world where that'd be perfect. They're going to be hands-on. They could do that all day, For us, yeah, it's possible. It's possible. Let's talk about it, right? So I think knowing that ahead of time, and you don't have to go outright and say it like that. You can phrase it a little more delicately if that makes it, feel better on your end. That's fine. But I think ultimately the goal is to get you a bathroom remodel project for the price you want, with a team that you trust, right? So if you think about those things, and it's like, how do you get there faster? So many people, I believe, approach us quite candidly, too reserved. They think that like, oh, if I tell them if I tell them my budget is 60K, they're just going to say, yeah, we'll do it for 60. And then that's it. It's like, well, that's not really the case. And you can tell a lot from a prospective builder or remodeler by how they respond to your question around that particular topic. So just flip the script, instead of us asking you your budget, say, hey, my budget is this. Can you do it? And then you'll start to understand how different contractors react to that. And there's no rule that says you have to hire them anyways. Like that's not really, doesn't have to work like that. So, because you'll still get competitive estimates, and you then will just gauge like, okay, well, what's the value? How much am I getting for that cost? And again, that's all how you want to approach it. But I think that's how I buy certain things. That's just how I approach it, mainly because I understand how I like it from my end too. So I just find that sometimes that gets us to the result faster. Some mistakes, and I've been on both sides of the fence as far as like being the lowest estimate and then coming in after the lower estimate and fixing stuff. So I think going with the lowest price can sometimes work. Again, I've been one of the lower ones. We've competed against really big players who were had pretty significant estimates put together, like as far as a budget was concerned. And I'm like, we can do it for, we don't have as much overhead, whatever. We can still accomplish everything, and everybody is happy. So I don't think that that's a one size fits all, but I would recommend caution for lowest estimates because they tend to be misleading. They tend to have errors, omissions, things like that, that are going to come up later, or they're going to turn into a horror story. trust your instincts, right? Like you have to like these people. You have to like who's going to be in your home. You have to trust them. You have to kind of get to know them. It may be for 2 weeks, it may be for 4 weeks, it may be for 8 weeks. Like it depends on the size of your project, but understanding, do you like this person? Do you like this team? Do you feel comfortable with them? Like, I think that's a big part of it, because it's more than just dollars and construction. It is people working with people. So trust your instincts, and really go with who you feel is the best fit for you and for your project and for your family. I hear this so often, and I try to stay calm about it, but apples to apples does not exist. It doesn't exist. So you got to get it through your head right now. It doesn't exist. It's not real. It doesn't happen. It is apple. What I say is it's apples to oranges to mangoes. What I mean by that is you're never going to be able to get the exact same estimate from at this level, generally speaking. You're never going to get the same estimate from 3 different teams with the only difference being price. You're never going to get there. The only way that you achieve that, and this is what happens in larger projects, is you've already designed the entire project. You've already picked out all of the materials that you're going to use. You already know exactly how you're going to do it, and everything has been determined. Then all you're basically reducing variables, right? And then all your sort of pricing or estimating on is going to be like the installation, the application of those things that are already selected for that design. So until you have that, which 99% of the time in this bathroom remodeling space, that is not available, and that is not how it's approached. Apples to apples doesn't exist. Forget about it. Just do that. Do yourself a favor, and you'll be better for it. Protecting your investment, right? What's your home worth? $500,000, $1 million, $5 million, right? Like it's a large investment. It's a large piece of you. It's your home. Whether you plan on staying there for 30 years or 3 years. I think understanding the level of risk that comes with choosing an inadequate contractor is something that should not be taken lightly. So just remember that. Kind of bundle it all up. I've been saying this kind of throughout the whole thing, but contractors are not commodities. And what I mean by that is we're not all the same. We're not a piece of steel. We're not a grain of rice. We are all different in how we approach projects, in the value we bring, in the team we've got put together, in the systems and processes behind us, in the quality, all of that, right? So contractors are not commodities. And you have to understand that when you are vetting and looking into them. I always like this saying. It's something that goes around our industry a lot, and it's you can there's 3 things in a project, or there's 3 things when selecting kind of your team: speed, quality, and price. You can only pick 2, right? And it tends to kind of fall into play, right? Like, let's say you want it to be done fast and you want it to be done well. Well, then you're going to have to sacrifice price, or it's going to meaning it's going to cost a little bit more. Let's say you want quality and you want a good price. Well, then maybe it's going to go fairly slow, right? It's like, well, I'll fit you in, if you want. I'm a good team, and I'll give you a good price when I'm in the slow season, or in between projects. I'll fit you in as I can, right? And then if you want speed, so fast, and a good price, quality is probably not going to be there. So logically, as you kind of put that together in that triangle, it's like, okay, here are the 3 things that are out there in the world. Pick 2. Occasionally, you'll get the unicorn situation where you get all 3. That does happen. It does happen. And in that case, good job, because that's a good, you did a good job searching, selecting, timing. There's some luck involved and all of that to bring it all together. And then don't be afraid if you don't feel comfortable, or if something's not right, don't be afraid to keep searching, right? If you've determined what your budget is, what the level of selection of the quality you're wanting. Like for us, right, it's essential, premier, deluxe. If you're like, we want a premier bathroom, our budget is this, we're looking for this, and we want it done in this amount of time, and then just search for that till you find what you want. I don't think it's, there's a point of diminishing return. There can be analysis paralysis. You can sort of over research, but there's also some value to just like really deep diving and talking to a lot of people and getting a better understanding of what's right for you and how to find that. So yeah, I think that's a final piece, and that's what's important. So thanks for hanging out with me, guys. If you have any questions, shoot them in the chat, or head on to our channel. Send us something in the comments. Be happy to kind of give some feedback and hopefully provide some more. We're going to keep doing some more of these. So thanks again. Have a great day.